Okay, welcome back. Today we're talking about Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. You've read the play already. I just want to cover some of the major points about this play, some of the important, I think, most important moments thematically. So we have a person, Willie Loman, who's losing it. His mind isn't as sharp as it once was. He's getting older. He's tired. Probably wasn't ever the greatest salesman ever. And even though he tells us that he was, or he seems to think he is, or think he was. And so, but part of what's going wrong with him, I think we can determine, is closely connected to the supposed failure of his son, Biff. Biff in high school was the big man on campus. He was supposed to set the world on fire, and he didn't. And Biff's failure somehow, if we want to define his life as a failure up to he's in his mid-30s, is closely tied to what's going wrong with Willie. Okay. There are portions of this book this play which feel like flashbacks. And I just want to make clear, if this were a flashback as in a movie, what we would be doing is going back in time, and we would see, let's say we went back 20 years in time, everybody would look 20 years younger. Okay? That's not what's happening here. What's happening here, instead of a flashback, is Willie goes back in time almost in his memory. So we don't actually physically go back in time. We are seeing events in Willie's life that he's replaying through his 60-plus-year-old brain. Okay, we're not going back in time, not necessarily looking at actual occurrences. Everything we see is filtered through Willie's mind. And in fact, the working title for this play was In His Mind, because Arthur Miller wanted to make clear everything that we are seeing, at least in the past, is something filtered through his mind. Okay. And so in some ways we have this tug of war, this back and forth between Willie and Biff throughout the play. And I want to look more closely at Biff. When we first meet him, he's talking with Happy. And let's skip over to page 258. And so Happy and he are talking. This was the room they shared when they were children and young teens. And they're back sleeping in the house. Biff is back from the West, we hear. And so Happy asks him, well, do you really enjoy it on a farm? Are you content out there? And Biff says, Hap, I've had 20 or 30 different kinds of jobs since I left home before the war, and it always turns out the same. I just realized it lately. In Nebraska, when I herded cattle, in the Dakotas and Arizona, and now in Texas. It's why I come home now, I guess, because I realize it. This farm I work on, it's spring there now, see? And they got about 15 new colts. There's nothing more inspiring or beautiful than the sight of a mare and a new colt. And it's cool now there, see? Texas is cool now, and it's spring. And whenever spring comes to where I am, I suddenly get the feeling, my God, I'm not getting anywhere. Okay, so what should be inspiring to him, and it's beautiful, and it's spring, and it's cool, and it's beautiful, and there's beautiful new colts around, and he's thinking, I'm not getting anywhere. What the hell am I doing playing around with horses, $28 a week? I'm 34 years old. I ought to be making my future. That's when I come running home. And now I get here, I don't know what to do with myself. I've always made a point of not wasting my life. And every time I come back here, I know that is all I've done is to waste my life. Okay, and so what should be sort of awe-inspiring to him isn't. And when he feels these moments, when spring rolls around, a lot of us feel, okay, it's new life, it's fresh, something new in our lives, heading towards summer, it's positive. But for him, it makes him sort of anxious and depressed, and it makes him run back to Brooklyn. Okay, so what is it that he's hoping to accomplish by going back to Brooklyn? And even Willie asked that question. Willie asked, why did he come home? I'd like to know. And Linda says, I think he's lost. And Willie can't believe it. Lost? A man like Biff Loman lost in the greatest country on earth? That's crazy. How can he be lost? And yet the Biff we see feels really lost. He's not really quite sure what he's supposed to be doing with his life. So let's skip over to the first, we could call it a flashback. Just to be clear, it's not really a flashback in the conventional sense. We're not going back in time. It's sort of almost as if the past is coming into Willie's present. And so it's best way of thinking of it is an old man having a memory of the past. And we always have to remember it's sort of filtered through that. Okay. And so Willie has just come back from a trip. The boys are younger. They're back in high school. And Biff is the captain of the football team. And they're talking and, hey, how are you nervous about this game coming up? Oh, I'm going to break through and I'm going to score a touchdown. But you're the quarterback. You're not supposed to do that. Page 26. Where'd you go this time? Biff asked Dad. Gee, we were lonesome for you. Lonesome, eh? Missed you every minute. Don't say. Tell you a secret, boys. Don't breathe it to a soul. Someday I'll have my own business and I'll never have to leave home anymore. Okay, well, you and I know that's never going to happen because we've seen the future, right? Like Uncle Charlie, eh? Bigger than Uncle Charlie because Charlie is not liked. He's liked, but he's not well liked. And then, so it's like, okay, well, where did you go? Well, I met the mayor of Providence and Biff says, gee, we'd love to go with you sometime. And Willie says, yeah, as soon as summer comes, promise, and you and Hap and I will show you the towns, full of beautiful towns, great people this summer. And of course, we also know that never happens, right? It's one of those things. He makes lots of promises, but these things never actually come true. Okay. Skipping then over to the next page, same scene, Bernard comes in. Bernard says, Biff, where are you? You're supposed to study with me today. And Willie says, again, I think it's kind of funny. Today, parents don't really make fun of classmates, at least to the classmate's face, do they? I don't think so. But Willie says right to Bernard's face, hey, look at Bernard. What are you looking so anemic about, Bernard? He's got to study, Uncle Willie. He's got Regents next week. And just to be clear, he's not really uncle. They're neighbors, okay? So he calls them Uncle Willie and Uncle Charlie. These aren't really their uncles of the children. And then Happy says, let's box, Bernard. And Bernard says, Biff, listen, Biff, I heard Mr. Birnbaum say that if you don't start studying math, he's going to flunk you and you won't graduate. I heard him. You better study with him, Biff. Go ahead now. I heard him, Bernard says. Oh, Pop, you didn't see my sneakers. And he holds it up and he says, hey, Willie says, that's a beautiful job printing. And Bernard says, just because he printed University of Virginia on his sneakers don't mean that they got to graduate him, Uncle Willie. And Willie says he's angry. What are you talking about? What's scholarships to 3 universities are going to flunk him? But I heard Mr. Birnbaum say, oh, don't be a pest, Bernard. What an anemic. And Bernard says, okay, I'm waiting for you in my house, Biff. And so Bernard goes off and Willie says, Bernard is not well liked, is he? And then Biff sort of echoes what Willie said before. He's liked, but he's not well liked. That's right, Pop, Hap says. That's just what I mean. So follow this advice. Bernard can get the best marks in school, you understand? But when he gets out into the business world, you understand, you are going to be 5 times ahead of him. That's why I think, Almighty God, you're both built like Adonis. Because the man who makes an appearance in the business world, the man who creates personal interest, is the man who gets ahead. Be liked, and you will never want. You take me, for instance. I never have to wait in line to see a buyer. Willie Loman is here. That's all they have to know, and I go right through. Okay, so note his the advice or the emphasis he gives his son. He's saying what's more important than anything else is to be liked, to present a particular appearance, and just like me, I walk in and they let me right in. I don't have to wait in line or anything. Some of that may be true, but when he says, okay, Bernard is going to get good grades, but when he gets out into the real world, you guys are going to be way ahead of him. Well, we get to meet Bernard when he's an adult, don't we? And Biff, 34 years old, doesn't seem to know where he's going in his life, whereas Bernard is going off to argue a case before the Supreme Court. And so Bernard has made it big in his short life. If Bernard is 34 and arguing before the Supreme Court, he's doing very, very well. So then Biff asks, did you knock him dead, Pop? And Willie says, knocked him cold in Providence, slaughtered him in Boston. And then Happy is saying, I'm losing weight. And you notice, Pop, poor Happy doesn't seem to be the favored child and is begging for attention. And then Linda shows up and says, how'd you do? Oh, I did great. I did wonderful, knocked him dead. And then she pulls out a pencil and paper and said, well, and then he kind of backs away. Well, it wasn't as good as I, was hoping. And boy, that Chevy is a terrible car. And, why'd we have to pay for that? Or the refrigerator's breaking down? Why'd we pay for that model? And so, they're struggling. They're struggling. Things are tough. Money's really tight. Okay, so when he brags about how great he is and what a great salesman he's doing, when Linda actually pulls out some paper and pencil, he, kind of has to confess, well, it wasn't quite as good, but next time I'll get him. So we can start to see the connection between Biff's, again, I want to put failure in quotation marks, because by the end of the play, he's going back to that life because he knows that's the life that's best for him. But what he perceives to be a failure, he and Willie perceive to be a failure during the play. You can see how Willie may be starting to doubt that he gave Biff the best kind of advice. And when he doubts himself, he really has two persons he goes to. He goes to his wife, Linda, and occasionally he'll say, well, people find me ridiculous, and, I talk too much, or, I don't look the part so well. And she always gives him support. No, you're the handsomest man in the world. You're the handsomest man to me. And, oh, you shouldn't say that. You're wonderful. So she's there really to buttress him. In some ways, I look at the Loman family as this house of cards, that Linda is doing everything she can to hold it together, to keep Dad's ego in place. And so she'll say anything and do anything. And then the other person that Willie turns to is a person who's not even alive anymore. When he's playing cards with Charlie, who is comparatively successful, his neighbor, and they're playing cards because Willie can't sleep, and he's talking with Charlie and saying, what have I got to give Biff? What have I got to remember? I'm out. I don't know why he comes back. And Charlie says, let him go. Let him go live his life. He'll be, not going to die. He's going to be fine. And Willie doesn't want to admit that, that this is, that it's good enough for Biff and it's good enough for the sort of life that he expected for Biff. And just at that moment, Willie looks at Charlie and calls him Ben. And then, so we jump to another, again, for lack of a better term, another flashback. But again, it's sort of the past coming into Willie's present. Willie's not going back into the past. It's as if the past is informing the present. So Ben comes back, and now we're back in the past when the boys are teenagers again, and kind of tells them stories about the family past, especially about his and Willie's father, who was very much of an outdoors kind of guy who could invent stuff and would stick the whole family in a wagon and travel west and sell things along the ways. And then somewhere along the line, the father abandons the family. And Ben, and it's just when Willie is a baby, really. And Ben supposedly goes off looking for the father, but ends up going in the wrong direction and goes off to Africa. And then later when we meet him here, he's apparently going off to Alaska, and that he's very wealthy, and he's the rugged sort of individual that Willie sort of believes anybody can be. Biff could be this rugged individual sort of person. So if we turn to page 275, they're talking, and how are you doing? It's Ben says, and meets his nephews, and Ben starts to pull away. I'll stop by on my way back to Africa, towards the bottom of 275. And Willie says, can't you stay a few days? You're just what I need, Ben, because I have a fine position here, but Dad left when I was such a baby. I never had the chance to talk to him, and I still feel kind of temporary about myself. That's a really fascinating thing for a man in his 60s to say. I feel temporary about myself. Okay, so he wants Ben. He's just what he needs. Okay. I'll be late for my train, says Ben. Ben, my boys, can't we talk? They'd go into the jaws of hell for me, see, but I William, you're being first rate with your boys, outstanding manly chaps. Oh, Ben, that's good to hear, because sometimes I'm afraid that I'm not teaching them the right kind of... Ben, how should I teach them? And Ben says, William, when I walked into the jungle, I was 17. When I walked out, I was 21. And by God, I was rich. Okay, it would be kind of nice to know what happened in between 17 and 21. How did he get rich? What did he do? And Willie says, was rich. That's just the spirit I want to imbue them with, to walk into a jungle. I was right, I was right, I was right. And Ben kind of disappears because he never really was there, right? We find out a little bit earlier that he's died. And so Willie's recalling, again, filtered through his memory, I guess a visit from Ben many, many years ago. But what Willie is calling up Ben for now is to, just like when he tries to get support from Linda, he's doing the same thing from Ben. He needs somebody to say, you're doing it right, you're doing it well, you're a good father. And when he needs Ben to say that, Ben kind of appears and says, you're teaching them the right kinds of things. You're being first rate with your boys. They're outstanding manly chaps. They are going to be well liked. They are going to present a positive figure, and therefore they don't need a lot of book learning like Bernard has. They're going to do fantastic in the world. And of course, we know in the fullness of time, by the time Biff is 34, nobody's going to be feeling that way about Biff. Well, shortly after this, Biff says, okay, I'll stick around for a while. And he's going to go and look up Bill Oliver, who he worked for some time ago, and ask if he could borrow money to start some sort of sporting goods line and some sort of idea where he and Happy are going to go do exhibitions and people are going to come watch. So I don't quite know what that plan is. It doesn't seem thought out very well. And then Willie is going to go to his boss, Howard, who is the son of his former boss, and ask, hey, can I not have to make so many trips? Could I be your, local guy and doesn't have to take trips? So that's the end. And then at the end of Act 1, we see Biff going downstairs and pulling a rubber tube off of the water heater. That would be a way to breathe in the natural gas. That would be a way for Willie to commit suicide, because Willie is contemplating suicide throughout the play. It's sort of subtle, but it's there. And even there was a moment when, maybe some of his car accidents weren't really accidents. So when we get to Act 2, we see Willie going in and asking Howard, hey, can I be the more of a local guy? And Howard fires him, says, we really don't want you representing the company anymore. And shortly thereafter, we see Willie going to Charlie's office to ask to borrow money. Of course, he says it's borrowing it and he's going to keep track, but Charlie's just giving him money, $50 a week, I think it is, just to help him out, because Charlie's a decent guy, even though Willie doesn't treat Charlie very well. When he gets to Charlie's office, Bernard, the grown-up Bernard, is there, and he is apparently doing very well. Page 298. And a little bit halfway, not quite halfway down the page, Willie says, I'm overjoyed to see how you made the grade, Bernard. Overjoyed. Well, of course he's not, because he has to be thinking, why was Bernard so successful and my son wasn't? It's an encouraging thing to see a young man really, really looks very good for Biff. So he wants to claim, Biff is doing great. He's a big sporting goods, man. He was Bill Oliver called him from West, needs to, wants to fund him. Looks really, really great for Biff. And then it's almost as if he can't even believe his own lies anymore. And Willie says, Bernard, what is it, Willie? What's the secret? What secret? How did you? Why didn't he ever catch on? I wouldn't know that, Willie. You were his friend, his boyhood friend. There's something I don't understand about it. His life ended after the Ebbets Field game. From the age of 17, nothing good ever happened to him. Bernard said he never trained himself or anything. But he did. After high school, he took so many correspondence courses, radio mechanics, television, God knows what, and never made the slightest mark. Okay, so these sort of schemes, get rich quick sort of schemes, and different things like that, that's not the way you really succeed. Bernard says, Willie, do you want to talk candidly? And Willie says, I regard you as a very brilliant man, Bernard. I value your advice. And Bernard says, to the hell with advice, Willie. I wouldn't advise you. But there's just one thing I've always wanted to ask you. When he was supposed to graduate and the math teacher flunked him, oh, that son of a bitch ruined his life. So Willie, again, is very, very quick to point to other people as a blame for Biff's failure. Yeah, but Willie, all he had to do was to go to summer school and make up that subject. That's right. Did you tell him not to go to summer school? Me, I begged him to go. I ordered him to go. Then why didn't he go? Why, Bernard? That's the question been trailing me like a ghost for the last 15 years. He flunked the subject and laid down and died like a hammer hit him. And Bernard's saying, all right, easy. Take it easy, kid. Let me talk to you. I got nobody to talk to, Bernard. Bernard, was it my fault? You see, it keeps going around in my mind. Maybe I did something to him. I got nothing to give him. And Bernard says, well, don't take it so hard. Why did he lay down? What is the story there? You were his friend. And so Bernard's going to say, well, I remember it was June. The grades came out. He flunked math. That son of a bitch. No, it wasn't right then. Biff just got very angry, I remember, and was ready to enroll in summer school. He was. He wasn't beaten by it at all. But then, Willie, he disappeared from the block for almost a month. And I got the idea he'd gone up to New England to see you. Did he have a talk with you then? And then Willie's just sort of quiet and silent. And just to kind of fill in the blank here of this quiet and silence, if you've read the play, you know that Biff goes up to Boston saying, oh, I flunked, Dad. What am I going to do? And Willie says, well, I'll talk to Mr. Birnbaum. And then suddenly there's a woman from the bathroom giggling, and Biff catches his father having an affair on his mother and also giving the stockings that were meant for his mother to this other woman. And this crushes Biff. Okay, now we can ask ourselves, why did it crush Biff so much? Why did it so bother him? And in fact, Willie says, well, don't worry, I'm going to call that Mr. Birnbaum. And Biff says, don't bother, he wouldn't listen to a person like you. And so Biff is crushed, and from that moment on, his life didn't seem to go so well. Now, why did it crush Biff so hard? Why was it so hard on Biff? One way of thinking about it is, well, why did Biff think he was so great in the first place? Well, because his father kept telling him, you're great, you're going to be great, you're going to be so far ahead of the Bernards of the world, you're going to make a big lasting mark on the world. And Biff believed it. He bought into it. But then when he realized, well, this comes from a man whom is not this great man he thought he was, then it's got to affect Biff. If somebody mediocre tells you you're great, it may interfere with your belief in your own greatness. Okay, especially if you believe a person telling you were great, if you believe that was a great person telling you that, then you realize this person is all too human and flawed, and maybe not such a great person after all. It's got to affect how you see yourself. And perhaps that's what happens to Biff. And so Willie says, yeah, he came to Boston. What about it? And, what about it? That had nothing to do with anything. And then he says, well, we came back and we fought, and I just knew, he threw his shoes in the furnace. I just knew he had given up. And Bernard says, I just bring it up because you asked me. Nothing. What do you mean what happened? What's that got to do with anything? Well, don't get sore. What are you trying to do? Blame it on me? If a boy lays down, is that my fault? Well, Willie, you were thinking before maybe it was something that you had done. And when Bernard actually says, points to the place where it may have happened, Willie gets all upset. Now, Willie, don't talk to me that way. What does that mean, what happened? And then Charlie comes in, and Charlie says, okay, you're going to be late for your train. And Bernard says, goodbye, Willie, and don't worry about it. If at first you don't succeed, yes, I believe in that. But sometimes, Willie, it's better for a man just to walk away. Walk away? That's right. But if you can't walk away, I guess that's when it's tough. Goodbye, Willie. Okay, so the advice Bernard is giving is let Biff live his own life. Just walk away, let Biff walk away. But Willie says, what if you can't walk away? And we can ask ourselves, why is it that Willie can't walk away? Okay, and then we find out that Bernard is going off to argue before the Supreme Court. And one of the things that surprises Willie is not just that Bernard is doing that, but that he didn't say anything about it. And Charlie points out, well, he doesn't have to say anything. He's going to do it. And then so he asks for money. And Charlie at the bottom of that page 300 says, sit down, Willie. I'm keeping account of everything. Remember, I'll pay every penny back. And neither of them believes that. Now listen to me, Willie. I want you to know I appreciate it. Willie, what are you doing? What the hell is going on in your head? Why, I offered you a job. You can make $50 a week and I won't send you on the road. I've got a job. Okay, so Willie said that before. I've got a job when Charlie offered him a job. But Willie, even at this moment, does not have a job. Okay, so essentially, Charlie, out of kindness, is seeing a drowning man and he's throwing him a lifesaver and saying, grab the lifesaver. Grab it. You're a drowning man. I'm going to rescue you. Just grab it. Without pay? What kind of job is a job without pay? Now look, kid, enough is enough. I'm no genius, but I know when I'm being insulted. Insulted? Why don't you want to work for me? What's the matter with you? I've got a job. Then what are you walking in here every week for? Well, if you don't want me to walk in here, I'm offering you a job. I don't want your goddamn job. Then when in the hell are you going to grow up? And he gets upset. You big ignoramus, if you say that again, I'm going to hit you. And then finally, it's how much do you need, Willie? And Charlie, I'm strapped. I don't know what to do. I was just fired. Okay, so he just said I have a job. And now he's saying I was just fired. And he said, Willie says, well, I always thought you were well-liked, impressive, well-liked. You would always have a job. And Charlie says, why? Where did you ever get that idea? So he says, Willie, I know you don't like me, and nobody can say I'm in love with you, but I'll give you a job because, just for the hell of it, put it that way. Now, what do you say? Here's a lifesaver. Just grab it. You say that you're strapped. You don't know what you're strapped. You don't know what to do. Grab the lifesaver. I just can't work for you, Charlie. What are you, jealous of me? I can't work for you. That's all. Don't ask me why. You've been jealous of me all your life. Here, pay your insurance. And he gives him the money. Okay, we're going to talk more about why it is that Willie cannot take this job when we read the essay Arthur Miller's wrote, largely with Willie Loman in mind, called Tragedy and the Common Man. And for this play, as strange as this may sound, this is one of the most heroic moments for Willie in this play. If Willie is a tragic hero, this is perhaps one of his most heroic moments. And if that seems strange like right now, when you when you read Tragedy and the Common Man and you listen to the lecture for that one, maybe it'll become more clear. Well, let's skip now towards the climax. So Willie met with his boys in a restaurant, and Biff refused to tell the story that, everything went well with Bill Oliver, and remembered Bill Oliver didn't even remember me, and I had to wait, and I grabbed his pen and I ran down a bunch of flights of stairs, and why'd you steal his pen for? You don't have to mention the pen. Willie isn't getting it. He just wants to hear good news. He doesn't want to hear any bad news. So if we skip to page 320, Biff says, I'm going to leave. Just below where it says Willie doesn't respond. Biff says, people ask where I am and what I'm doing. You don't know and you don't care. That way it'll be off your mind and you can start brightening up again. All right? That clears it, doesn't it? And Willie doesn't say anything. You going to wish me luck, Scout? Holds out his hand. What do you say? Shake his hand, Willie, Linda says. There's no necessity to mention the pen at all, so he's not giving up. He's not giving up on this fantasy, this dream, this thing that's never going to happen. I've got no appointment, Dad. He put his arm around, which didn't happen, by the way, Dad, you're never going to see what I am, so what's the use of arguing? If I strike oil, I'll send you a check. Meantime, forget I'm alive. Spite. See, Willie says to Linda. Now, spite's kind of an interesting word because spite suggests that you are hurting yourself to hurt me. You're doing it out of anger towards me. And when you accuse somebody of spite, you're saying, that's on you. That's not on me. I maybe disappointed you by cheating on your mother and you found out about it. But everything you've been doing from then on has been spite. And that's on you. And Biff says, shake hands, Dad. Not my hand. I was hoping not to go this way. Well, this is the way you're going. Goodbye. And then so he says, I was all right, ready to turn. And then Willie says, may you rot in hell if you leave this house. And Biff says, exactly what is it you want from me? I want you to know on the train, in the mountains, in the valleys, wherever you go, that you cut down your life for spite. No, spite. Spite is the word of your undoing. And when you're down and out, remember what did it. When you're rotting somewhere beside the railroad tracks, remember, and don't you dare blame it on me. Okay, and that's Biff's point. Biff's saying, look, I'm leaving. It's my fault. I am what I am. Just pretend I don't exist, okay? And Willie can't let go, and so he accuses him of spite and saying, I won't take the blame. I'm not blaming it on you. I won't take the rap for this. You hear? And Biff says, that's just what I'm telling you. You're trying to put a knife in me. Don't think I don't know what you're doing. So Biff finally, all right, that does it. All right, phony. Then let's lay it on the line. And he takes the rubber tube, the thing that Willie was going to use to commit suicide, and says, let's have it out, okay? And Willie at first claims, I don't know what that is. You know goddamn well what it is. I never saw that. He said, yeah, well, the mice didn't bring it in. And Biff says, there will be no pity for you. You hear it? No pity. And Willie still is saying, you hear this bite? No, you're going to hear the truth, what you are and what I am. Stop it, says Linda. Spite, says Willie. You cut it out, says Happy. The man don't know who we are. The man is going to know. We never told the truth for 10 minutes in this house. And Happy jumps in because this is what Happy always does. We always told the truth. You big blow. Are you the assistant buyer? You're one of the two assistants to the assistants, aren't you? Well, you're practically full of it. We all are, and I'm through with it. Now hear this, Willie. This is me. Willie says on page 322, I know you. You know why I had no address for 3 months? I stole a suit in Kansas City, and I was in jail. And then Gwyneth's crying. Stop crying. I'm through with it. I suppose that's my fault. I stole myself out of every good job since high school. And whose fault is that? And I never got anywhere because you blew me so full of hot air, I could never stand taking orders from anybody. That's whose fault it is. So he is, in a certain extent here, blaming Willie, saying, you made me think I was so great that I was not a very good employee. Not good taking orders from anybody else. I hear that. Don't, Biff. It's goddamn time you heard that. I had to be boss big shot in 2 weeks, and I'm through with it. Then hang yourself. For spite, hang yourself. No. Nobody's hanging himself, Willie. Okay, so it's sort of interesting. What Willie is inviting him to do is to kill himself, hang yourself for spite. And, of course, Willie's the one who's planning on killing himself, and Willie does kill himself at the end of the play by smashing his car. No, nobody's hanging himself, Willie. I ran down 11 flights with a pen in my hand today, and suddenly I stopped. You hear me? And in the middle of that office building, do you hear this? I stopped in the middle of that building, and I saw the sky. I saw the things that I love in this world, the work and the food and time to sit and smoke. And I looked at the pen, and I said to myself, what the hell am I grabbing this for? Why am I trying to become something I don't want to be? What am I doing in an office? Making a contemptuous begging fool of myself when all I want is out there waiting for me the minute I say I know who I am. Why can't I say that, Willie? Okay, so what he recognizes is the life he's been living on these farms and with horses, and that life is the life he loves. It's the life he wants for himself. He doesn't want to work in an office. He never wants to do that kind of work. He just wasn't made for that kind of work. So when he is in Texas doing the kind of work that he loves to do, he feels guilty. He is carrying the burden of his father's disappointment. He feels it. He feels that burden, and it's eating him up inside. That's why he asked Willie, just forget I exist. Because if you forget I exist, then I'm free. He's begging to be set free. The door of your life is wide open. Pop, I'm a dime a dozen. Okay, so dime a dozen is kind of an old-timey way of saying I'm not worth very much. And then he says, and so are you. I'm a dime a dozen, and so are you. Ouch. Willie says, I am not a dime a dozen. I am Willie Loman. As if that means anything in the world. I am Willie Loman. Okay, that doesn't mean anything. You could say, I am Oedipus Rex. At least Oedipus could say, I'm Oedipus Rex. I was something. Willie Loman doesn't even mean anything. He is literally a low man. And he adds, and you are Biff Loman. And Biff says, I am not a leader of men, Willie, and neither are you. You were never anything but a hardworking drummer. A drummer is a salesperson, is another slang term for a salesman, who landed in the ash heap like all the rest of them. I'm $1 an hour, Willie. I tried 7 states and couldn't raise it. $1 an hour. Do you gather my meaning? I'm not bringing home any prizes anymore, and you're going to stop waiting for me to bring them home. Okay, so he's saying, look, those days when I bring home prizes, those days are over. That's not going to happen anymore. That's not who I am. That's not the life I want. And when he says, and you're going to stop waiting for me to bring them home, he is begging to be set free from Willie's dream of Biff's greatness. It's stop waiting for me to bring home trophies. I know that's what you want from me, but that's not the life I want to live. So he is begging his father to be set free. Now, if my son came up to me and said, please set me free, and it's a very emotional moment, we're all close to tears here. And of course, as a father, I'd say, son, you go live your own life. I'm sorry that you felt you're a prisoner to my expectations. You're not. I just want you to be happy. I want you to find a life that you'll be happy. And if you're happy on a farm, I'm happy with you on a farm. That's what I would have said, right? But then again, I'm not a tragic hero. I'm not Willie Loman. I'm not somebody that Arthur Miller writes a play about as somebody who is heroic. Okay, now watch. Willie comes out one more time. You vengeful, spiteful mutt. Biff grabs him. Pop, I'm nothing. I'm nothing, Pop. This is heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Can't you understand that? There's no spite in it anymore. I like that anymore, because maybe once upon a time there was a little spite, but now there's no spite in it anymore. I'm just what I am, that's all. He's begging to be set free. He's begging to be accepted for who he is, and if not accepted for who he is, to be forgotten, so that he could go on and live his life. He is begging. He is in tears now. And Willie's surprised, shocked. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why is he crying? And Biff says, will you let me go for Christ's sake? Will you take that phony dream and burn it up before something happens? And then he says, I'll go in the morning, put him to bed. And off he goes. Okay, and so we watch him walk off stage. And it's just this very, very draining moment. We've had this climax, and it's just very emotionally powerful. And Willie says, you know what, I was wrong all this time. I've got to let him go. He's got to live his life. No, he doesn't. He says, isn't that remarkable? Biff, he likes me. That's what Willie just got from that scene. That, wow, my son, Biff, he actually likes me. And then, of course, Linda jumps in. He loves you, Willie. Happy jumps in. Always did, Pop. Oh, Biff, he cried to me. That boy is going to be magnificent. And you're the audience, and you just let go of. He just didn't understand what Biff was asking of him. Or if he did understand, he refuses to give Biff what he is begging for. He will not let go of the dream. He cannot believe that Biff won't make good someday and that he won't be magnificent. And he believes, because he's going to, if he kills himself, there is a insurance policy, and he's going to use the money, or he hopes that Biff can use the money, the $20,000, to start some sort of business and be great in the way that Willie imagines what greatness is. And Willie goes off and smashes the car and kills himself. And the next thing we know, we are at the Requiem, we are at his gravesite. And a very short section. And Charlie is saying, look, nobody should blame Willie for what he did. He's a salesman, and the fact is that, when he gets older, you get a little more tired, and you get a couple of spots on your hat, and you're finished. So nobody should blame this man. Biff says, Charlie, the man didn't know who he was. And he says earlier in the Requiem, he had all the wrong kind of dreams. The man didn't know who he was. We hear about Willie that he can put up a ceiling, that he loved to do things with his hands, that he loved to finish building things. He made a stoop. He finished the cellar. He put up a new porch. He added an extra bathroom. Maybe that's what he should have been doing with his life. His sort of hobby, maybe that should have been his life, but he maybe never should have been a salesman. He comes from a family of a tradition of being rugged outdoor sort of individuals like that, but he had the wrong dreams. And so Biff says, Charlie, the man didn't know who he was. And then Happy's upset. Don't say that. And Biff says, why don't you come with me, Happy? In other words, come live my life. And Happy says, I'm not licked that easily. I'm staying right in the city, and I'm going to beat this racket. And then Biff said, I know who I am, kid. So by the end of this play, Biff can admit who he is, the kind of life he wants to live. And he's going to be able to go and live that life. Happy, though, is still stuck in Willie's mindset. All right, boy, I'm going to show you and everybody else that Willie Loman did not die in vain. He had a good dream. It's the only dream you can have, to come out number one man. He fought it out here, and this is where I'm going to fight it out. And so we can project that Happy is not going to be especially successful. He has the wrong sort of notions of what it takes to thrive in that world. And so we can kind of predict his failure now. Biff's going to go back, live the life he wants to live. Happy is stuck in the same mode. And Linda, in the end, is just sort of confused. I just don't know why you did this. We're free now. We finally made the last payment on the house. We're free. And that's where the play ends. So next time, we're going to talk about tragedy and the common man. Okay, take care. Don't forget to take the quiz. Bye now.